Hi, this is Scott Bradfield, and this is a new experiment for me. It's a private tutorial workshop that I'm running myself without any university backing or without any affiliation with anybody who has a position of responsibility in the world. This is simply me and you trying to run good creative writing workshops for people who are, I'm going to characterize them as hopeless beginners. That's what I am as a writer. I'm a hopeless beginner. Every time I sit down to a story or a novel, I have no idea what I'm doing. I have no idea if it's going to work out or not. I have no idea if it's good or not. And this is a course for us. It's also a course, to be totally frank, I'm a writer and a novelist, a short story writer, and I've taught for many years. As much as I love teaching, I've taught primarily to support myself as a writer. And I've found over the years that working in universities and even further ed programs isn't always the best way to teach or the best way to work with students. And I'm going to talk a bit about that. First of all, I want to make a confession. I've taught creative writing and literature for 30 years, probably more than that, 30 plus something years. And the longer I've taught, and the more I've taught, and the more I've learned about teaching, particularly about creative writing and reading good fiction, good literature. You'll see my house is filled with books that I enjoy reading. The more I've done this, the more I have felt like a charlatan, like a complete con man, like a hoaxer, somebody who is pretending to know things that they don't. Because the more I teach creative writing, the more I realize I am teaching the obvious. I am an idiot teaching to idiots. And I mean that in a fairly pleasant way, in the sense that fiction writing, like anything we enjoy and any pleasures we get out of life, is not that hard. Of course, it takes a great deal of dedication, it takes a lot of time, but the actual skills of telling stories and writing sentences and presenting those stories on the page are things that most people can learn. You don't have to be a genius. You can be incredibly stupid, and you can still learn how to write decent stories and good sentences. You learn that from obvious ways. You don't learn them necessarily by taking $8,000, $20,000 pound a year courses at universities. You don't take them by taking courses from people who have not written fiction, or from people who have written lots of fiction but have never taught. You learn to write fiction by reading good fiction. And I can't tell you how obvious that is to all of us who write and read, and how difficult it is to sometimes convey to anybody, particularly universities, particularly to students. You learn to write by reading. So the emphasis on these courses, which are being presented in a sort of idiosyncratic, personal manner, they're not being presented in a way that I think will encourage lots of people to take them, but they're being presented in a way that I think will help people learn to write. The thing I've learned over many years of teaching is that all of my students want to write a lot of stuff. They can write lots of stuff, and they want lots of feedback on their stuff that they write. But when it comes to actually reading good fiction, I've almost sometimes got to tie them up to ropes in front of books. They're too busy, they have jobs, they're working hard, they have lives and families, and understandably, they feel they don't have time to read a lot of fiction. But as I keep telling my students, the only way you will learn to write is to learn to read, and to read for pleasure. Now, this brings us to the biggest problem in teaching and learning creative writing and good fiction writing. Well, creative writing is a horrible term. Writing good fiction. And that is that universities and our high schools and our secondary schools in the world aren't designed to teach you anything about how to write good fiction. They're designed to teach you to analyze fiction, to talk about thematic content and foreshadowing and the Victorian sensibility and the gender roles of characters and all of the things that have almost nothing to do with writing fiction. I'm going to almost, as much as I love teaching, cultural history of literature and history of the novel and so forth, I have to emphasize this as strongly as possible. Most of these issues are not on the minds of novelists and short stories when they write novels and short stories. They don't sit down and go, I'm going to write about the gender stereotypes of 19th century England or of contemporary postmodern culture and in the age of the... They don't think about that stuff. They're trying to tell stories about people or creatures or characters that mean something to them. The good writers are doing that. Now, we're going to try to focus on that aspect of writing by focusing on what we read. And in this course, even more so than any of my affiliated courses, as a completely separate course, I'm emphasizing it's called creative reading and writing. Writing is the second ladder step. The top step is reading. And we're going to try to read books every term. As far as you getting feedback, I'm going to be totally frank, that'll be the second thing on my mind. The first thing is to get you to give feedback about good fiction. You don't have to like the fiction. You can recognize, you can find it uninteresting. We're going to look at good novelists and good short story writers who may or may not be taught at your university, but short story writers and novelists who have written lots of novels and stories, and who many people enjoy. So whether you like them or not is not the issue. The issue is, what are they doing time after time after time that make these stories interesting to readers? We don't care about the academics. We don't care about the thematic content. We don't care about the deconstructive qualities of the postmodern novel. That's all for people who don't read books. Our course is for reading books. So each term, we will focus on reading a good writer. Now, again, these are my choices, and the writers who I've read for many years and who I'm going to pull off the shelves as writers I can read over and over again and enjoy reading them. And I'm going to ask you to look at them as writers. If you want to learn how to write a book, you have to learn how to read a book and see what the writer is doing. In the course of our program, each student will be allowed to submit 2 workshop pieces. So for each course, each student could produce two pieces of work of 4,000 words at the top. So altogether, 4,000 words in 2 pieces. And we will have very constructive workshop sessions, very specific workshop sessions on what you are writing. But the first job every week will be to read good writers. Now, again, my feeling about online courses is always you bring out of those courses what you have time for. So I'm going to be pretty tough on saying the first thing I can give you is a course on how to read good writers, and to read them not like somebody who wants to pass their A-levels or somebody who wants to get an MA at a university, but somebody who wants to learn how to write well. That's how I'm going to try to help you read. It's the sort of thing that all writers do. It is a very easy thing to do, but it does mean jettisoning all of this stuff you learned in school. So we will run this course as an experiment. Every term will be an experiment. It will be a joy. It will be an incredible aggravation, particularly to me, because I will try to work the media and the tech of the world, which I'm not. I'm literally learning things like Facebook and blogging in order to run these courses. But we're just trying to find ways that you can get access to good criticism, not just from me, but from other students. 90% of these types of courses is the other students who come to these classes. And then each term, I will provide and set up a framework for discussion of good writers. And that's your first job. So I will say this one last time. If you want to learn how to write, don't be going to read Beowulf. Don't be going to read, Dickens. I love Dickens, but don't go read Dickens. You should be reading living, good writers of the past 20, 30 years. People who write the books of your generation and of your world. And I'm going to try to help you with that. If you don't want to read those writers, or you have not time for it, you're still welcome to the class. But I won't be able to help you, and you will not learn. I'll be totally frank. I've spent 25 years having people say, how do I do this? How do I do that? How do I do this? And my answer has increasingly been, look at a good book and see how they do it. Because there's a lot of ways to punctuate dialogue, open a scene, present a character as they come into a room, move your characters from one scene to another. There's quite a few ways of doing it, and all of the good writers in the world have learned all these techniques, and they're not hard to learn, but you will need to read, and that's the purpose of this course. So if whatever time you take this course, it will be an experiment in progress, and it will be an unresolved experiment in progress, and so be patient with the technically inefficient person behind that, and they will be tutorials, really group tutorials that are designed to help you work with one another and enjoy reading. I would hope that you will at least enjoy the books we read in here and reading one another's work. Okay, thank you very much, and I will see you soon. Bye.